All right then. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session where we'll hear about the Independent Living Fund Scotland. We'll find out more about them as an organisation, what they can offer disabled people, and how you guys can get involved. My name is Emma Scott. I am the Operations Manager at Disability Equality Scotland, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Ali, Ian and James, who will be helping to facilitate today's session. For those of you not familiar with us, Disability Equality Scotland is a national charity and we're working to improve the lives of disabled people in Scotland. Now, some of you will have been to our events before and some of you will be new. So let me just take a few minutes to explain how today's session will run and how you can interact with us. Today we're in a meeting format, and that means that you have the chance to have your camera on or off, as well as your microphone. But could I ask that everybody keeps themselves on mute unless you're invited to speak? That just helps us cut down on any background noise and distractions. You can also choose to have your camera on or off, but again, if you're speaking, can you please have your camera on, as this helps us with inclusive communication, but especially when we move into our small discussion groups later on, it is useful if you have your camera on so we can interact as part of the discussion. What would also help is if you have your name on display on your screen is the name that you registered under so that we can identify you. And if you can use your real name as well, that also helps us. I'll soon hand over to our panellists today, and we're joined by Lee House from the Independent Living Fund Scotland, and also from Andrew Batchelor, who is a young ambassador with ILF Scotland, and we'll hear from them in just a moment. At any time during today's webinar, you will have the opportunity to submit your questions to Lee and Andrew. To do so, you can type your question into the chat box at the bottom control panel, and if we've got time, we'll get to as many questions as we can during the Q&A session, or the guys will answer them after the event and get back to you. If you want, you can ask a panellist a question directly. Please say so in the chat, and then we can sort out how to unmute you and get you to ask your question. Any technical difficulties today, then please just let us know and Ali will do his best to help you behind the scenes. As I mentioned, we do have some BSL interpreters with us today. Again, please let us know in the chat if you think you could benefit from this, and we have closed captions available. If you'd like to see the captions on screen, sorry, my phone's ringing. Bear with me just a second. We do have closed captions available. If you'd like to see the captions on screen, they can be accessed via the closed captions button, which you can find at the bottom, either under the more button or there's three little dots. You can select the show subtitle and you should be able to find the captions from there. But again, any problems, let us know in the chat. We are recording today's webinar and we'll share the link with those who can't make it along. If you don't want to be recorded, please do keep your camera off. We've also got a short survey afterwards that we'll send to you, so please do take the time to give us your views so that we can plan ahead for the next webinars. But before we start, can I just check everybody can hear me okay? Want to give me a little thumbs up? Great, lovely. So I'll just set today in context very briefly. We're here to talk about the Independent Living Fund Scotland, and that operates as a discretionary fund providing financial awards to over 3,000 disabled people in Scotland and Northern Ireland to help them live independently. And that funding enables individuals to pay for care so that they can be supported in their homes and within their local communities. So before today's meeting, we asked the members of Disability Equality Scotland whether there's enough support in place to make independent living a reality for young disabled people in Scotland. Now, 98% of the respondents to that survey said no, that there wasn't enough support. So that's a really useful feedback that helps us shape our discussions today. I think it's time I should hand over before my phone keeps ringing. I'll hand over to Lee, who is the Engagement and Events Officer at ILF Scotland, who will start our discussion. Lee, you should take over.
That's so brilliant. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for the introduction. Sorry, your phone's going there. So yeah, I'll talk through a bit, just touch on some of the stuff that Emma has said about ILF and what we offer as an organisation at the moment. So my name's Lee. As Emma said, I'm the Engagement and Events Officer for Independent Living Fund Scotland. I have been in this role for the last year, so I started about 3 or 4 weeks before we went into full lockdown. So my job is really to go out and promote ILF across the country and in Northern Ireland, where we're based as well. Our funding's based, and obviously talking about what we're up to, and obviously, which I'll touch on in a second, our transition fund that's been a huge success. Obviously, that's changed a lot because of lockdown, and everything's been done online, like these events that you're attending today. So it was a bit of a whirlwind start. But previous to that, I was a caseworker with ILF. So for the people that maybe don't know about how that works, it's really looking at account management for the funding that goes out, and the guys deal with policies and all sorts of different things in terms of individual accounts and the funding. So I was part of that team first, and then moved into doing a bit of engagement, and then was taken on full time in that role, which I'm really enjoying. But as I say, as for everyone who's here today, it's probably been a really difficult year in terms of finding out information. And I'm hoping today that we can share some things that people might not have known about, and get some experience and get some feedback from you guys as well to see how we can make a difference moving forward. So, as Emma touched on, the fund was open in England originally from in the 80s, actually. And they were based in Nottingham, and that fund is still currently maintained in Scotland and Northern Ireland only. It announced they were closing in England in 2010, and we still get phone calls from people in England. So that money was then ring-fenced to local authorities. But the Scottish Government wanted to keep it going up in Scotland and Northern Ireland, so we look after around 3,000 people. And that money is used to help people live independently and get out in the community. And that's across all age groups. So that fund is maintained at the moment. But Emily has got an interest in health and social care in Scotland. We've been recently mentioned a few times within the Feely report, which is looking at the landscape and changing and moving forward and how we can improve across the board in Scotland and how it's all set up. And hopefully, we're hoping into next year that they'll be looking at reopening that fund that we now call the 2015 fund. That's when we took over. It's really an original name. But we'd like to see that reopen again, and possibly in Northern Ireland. So there's currently papers being submitted within Northern Ireland ministers to look at that. So we are very hopeful that we're going to be part of that landscape moving forward. In the meantime, when we were open, we did a lot of work and engagement across Scotland, looking at a fund that could be open for young people and what would that look like. So we worked with many different organisations, did a lot of engagement, and just got some ideas together from the young people with disabilities, what they would like to see from a national fund. So we took these back to our sponsors and our board, and put a few, I think overall, I think there was about 4 or 5 different proposals. And the thing that kept coming back was about transition and the lack of it, and it being quite fragmented in Scotland. And I've done a lot of engagement post-COVID at schools and organisations, and you can see the fear and that coming from parents, where they're not sure about where to go after their child leaves school, goes to university, college. What do they do next? And transition has always come up as quite a tough subject for getting something in place at the relevant times as well. So looking at that plan from 15 into 16 and taking it forward when you're leaving school, or as I say, college or university. I mean, transition can happen at any point in your life, but our fund wanted to specifically look at getting people off to a good start. So I'll tell you a little bit about the fund, and then we'll come on to Andrew, who's going to talk about his experience with transition and the fund itself. But I just wanted to touch on some of the basics of the fund. So this fund that we provide is a year grant, and it is to support young people living with disabilities as defined in the Equality Act 2010. So really, that if you've ever had a chance to look at that act, it covers absolutely everything. So this includes autism, learning difficulties, physical disabilities, mental health, anxiety, depression, hearing or visual impairments. There's some of the main sort of triggers on applications that we see. Mental health is absolutely, as everyone will know, has been huge. Before the pandemic, it's kind of just went off the scale now through the pandemic, with isolation being quite, massive in terms of people having to stay at home. So this purpose of this fund, just to let you all know, is ages between 16 and 25 you can apply for, and it's helped with a transition after leaving school or children's services to be more independent and spend time with other people. Now, we know that's become quite difficult through isolation, but people have been really creative in the terms of their applications that they've been putting through. There are really basic criteria to this fund as well that we're that we're telling people about. You can be between 16 and 25, but you can apply at 15. And the idea behind that is that you would then be able to get your money at 16, and it's the start of your plan if you are leaving school, going into education or jobs. But that would be part of the plan that you get from your school and your guidance teachers or your support network there who would set up that plan. It doesn't always happen, and that's what we've found, but we'd like to be that additionality there. You have to be a resident of Scotland for the duration of your grant period. As I say, having impairment and disability is defined in the Equality Act, and the young person has less than 28,500 in personal savings. It's a policy that we've carried forward from our other fund that we have. So you do need some proof of disability to apply for this fund. If you DLA a PIP, that can act as your proof, but you can get a supporting letter for somebody you've been working with, and just to kind of support the application, say this is, for Jack or Jill, they've been going through these barriers, this is what they've been facing, this is what the fund would do for them. So one of the key questions is obviously what can the money be used for? So all different things. We look at everything on a case-by-case basis, but I will send out some guidance after via Emma and the guys to pass out to you some links and FAQs that go in a bit more detail on this. I'm conscious I will save time today, but it's reminding you that any items that you apply for, they have to have quotes attached, fully quoted, and it's to help you spend time with other people, reduce isolation and get out in the community. Now that has been difficult, as I said, through lockdown. People have been a bit more creative. They've either had maybe some exercise equipment at home or sports online coaching. They've been doing courses online. They're getting part of the gaming community as well. What we're saying is when you apply for this, be specific about what is the benefits of that item that you're going to get funding for. What is it going to do for you in that year grant that you've got? I'll give you a quick list of some of the things that we get a lot: art and music lessons, device and technology, join a class or club, travel, training, driving lessons. So we would fund you for up to 40 hours of driving lessons, practical in your theory. Just wouldn't fund the car. That would be the only thing we get asked a lot. But so a basic goal, just to give you a basic goal for a driving one, would be I want my driving lessons. It will help me improve my confidence, my self-esteem. It would then allow me to apply for jobs. I could then maybe pick up my friends and join a class or club. I could socialise more. So it's all the benefits coming from that, having that item. And that, as part of the application process, is really displaying that, and the questions kind of bring that out. We do have some limits on that funding, and it's really just saying if another organisation should fund it, then they should do that, and you should look at that first before coming to us and just letting us know. And a lot of the other things are really stuff that local authorities should look at, protection, personal medical care, aids and adaptations. You should really speak to your local authority and reach out about that first. So just a touch on how much money you can get for the year. It's up to £4,000 to help with your transition, which is a great amount of money. And it's worth noting that if you still fit the criteria every year, if you were, say, 16, you could have up to 9 years of funding, because you can reapply once you're signed off. And all we ask is the receipts come in, and then we sign you off, and then you can plan again for your second year, another transition. And we're a very flexible fund as well. If you're not enjoying stuff, you can contact the office. We can redirect the funding. There's a really ample opportunity here for this fund to make a real difference in the lives of the young people. We also offer a young person's planning grant. A lot of people apply and not sure what they want to do. We have a separate kind of lane for that. You can apply, and that money is not affected from your full amount, so it won't come off the full amount. So you can identify someone in your area to do person-centred planning, and they can also bring all that together and help you then apply for the fund. So it's just for people that maybe not sure what they want to do with the fund. Again, the stuff that I send out after will go into a bit more detail of that. And as I said to Emma, my details will be available for one-to-one chats via email or phone calls if you want to, because obviously we're looking at timings today. There's a lot more involved in this fund, and there's a lot more information. I can go in a bit more detail at another time, but I just wanted to give you the sort of background of what we've been working on with ILF, and this is something that we're really passionate about. The feedback we get from parents and young people is that it's changing their lives. It's getting them off to an amazing start in their transition period. It's giving them confidence. It's reducing isolation. We've had different organisations do a lot of feedback for us. We've also just done a COVID feedback survey, and some of the feedback from the fund has just been, it can really make you feel quite emotional to see the difference it's making in young people. So with that being said, our tagline is try something new. So that's what we want people to do, and young people to reach for the stars. And I know it can be quite cheesy, cliche, but really just getting whatever they're passionate about and taking it and driving forward and driving change in young people, no matter, you know, what barriers you're facing, what disability you have. We want to get you to the place where you want to go. So I think it's a good time really just to pass over to Andrew, who applied for funding from us, and he has had a great experience, I think, and he'll tell you more about it, but I'll just hand you over to Andrew.
Right, thank you very much, Lee, and hi everyone. Thank you for being here today. Yeah, well, to get you a bit of background of what I do, I'm going to hang on. I'm going to and then I have I'm a ILF Scotland ambassador, and I wanted to, you know, showcase my experience and background with ILF. And just to get you a bit of an idea who I am and what I do, my name's Andrew Batchelor, and I'm 20 years old. I was born with several disabilities, including cerebral palsy, autism, epilepsy, dyslexia, dyscalculia, clonus, and anxiety disorder. I'm a Dundee ambassador. I'm a design champion for the V&A Dundee, and I'm an ambassador for digital leaders, and I was ambassador for ILF Scotland, and most of all, I'm a passionate Dundonian. So what I do is I run a social media brand called Dundee Culture, and Dundee Culture is a social media platform which showcases Dundee to the world. I started in 2013 at the age of 12 with the sole aim of promoting Dundee's UK City of Culture bid. At that time, there was not a lot of social media presence for Dundee, and I took it upon myself to create something that would help promote Dundee and its bid to a wider audience. And so I came across them promoting it, and then what happened was Dundee wasn't as successful in the bid. So, and what happened there was then afterwards, I went on to continue building Dundee Culture after it got a lot of followers, and since then Dundee Culture has gained a lot of presence. It's an award-winning social media brand which is dedicated to promoting Dundee on a daily basis. And as of July 2021, Dundee Culture has got over 41,000 followers, and it's been visited by over 37 million people over the course of its history, and 8 million of those are from this year alone, from 100 countries from around the world. So it's surprisingly unbelievable in my mind that I would be sitting here doing what I do and doing what I love. And it's something that I'm very passionate about, and there's so many reasons why. So why do I do Dundee Culture? Well, I'm a very passionate Dundonian, and when I was a kid, I started having that love for Dundee, and that was inspired from my auntie, who sadly passed away shortly before I started doing Dundee Culture. She used to take me and my brother across Dundee, showed me the sights, showed me her love for Dundee. She loved Dundee more than me, I think. So her inspiration led to me loving Dundee, and then eventually my love for Dundee went into Dundee Culture. And I feel like the reason why I do this, and it's more important than ever, is to make Dundee's voice heard louder than ever before, because Dundee has had a negative reception over the course of the past few decades, such as its problems with drug deaths and all these sort of things. But I'm trying to put a positive impact on Dundee, because there's so much change going on here. We've got so many achievements that are going on right now. We've got so many amazing people doing a lot of change in the city, and the city's having it's reinventing itself for the future. And I would say Dundee is living through its most exciting period, I think, in my opinion, to ever be in the existence. So it's going through a lot of change at the moment, and what makes me proud to be Dundonian is the fact that Dundee changes its identity, and it does something about it, as it has a negative image, but then they've come up and the people of Dundee change and do something about it, and not a lot of cities do that. And I just feel that that is my drive. Dundonians across the city and around the world are my drive to do what I do. And I love Dundee so much because it's changing in front of my eyes. It's changing in front of world, and it's really making a huge impact. And so this is where ILF Scotland comes in. So my first experience with ILF Scotland came in 2018, when I was named one of 3 Year Young People's Champions 2018 at the Young Scot Awards. And this was after I did a campaign on promoting young people from across Dundee. And so after the award event, I met Peter Scott, the Chief Executive of ILF Scotland, and he was intrigued to know more about Dundee culture because the story behind it kind of got a lot of attention at that time. So what we did was we met up and we discussed what ILF Scotland could do for me. And it was really interesting to get an insight of what it was and how it could make a positive impact on me and Dundee culture and expand on what I'm doing. And now at this time I was aiming to get an office space because I was struggling as Dundee culture was growing, and there wasn't really a lot of space where I could do my work because I was expanding my content to things where I had to have more equipment. So what happened then was we discussed an idea of what we can do, and that's when the whole process was to get my old garden shed renovated into a studio space for me. And what happened was we originally planned for it to be just an old shed that'd be renovated into a new office for me, but it was falling apart and it was too old. So that's where I applied for ILF funding. And I requested the grant to get a brand new studio built, and it was the purpose of growing Dundee culture and growing me being independent. And the process was very efficient, and the guys were brilliant throughout that process. And I got a lot of experience in getting to explain about my stuff quite well to them, and it was so much amazing process to go through at a time where Dundee culture was growing quite a lot. So I got the grant, I was successful, and we started working on getting the shed demolished, as you can see in the pictures. We got the shed demolished and we got a new studio built in the garden, and then this was the final result. So beforehand, this was where what it was like during the construction phase, and then after it was built, this is what it looked like. And it's something that it kind of changes your life in a way, because I never thought for a second that I'd be sitting here doing this in something that I have built, I feel like, without any support up until now. I mean, because what I have learned, I think, over the course is that you get a lot of support, and ILF Scotland is one great example of that. So it really has helped me so much. And so the studio opened on the 23rd of August in 2019 by Peter. And what happened was it got attention from the media, and it opened up. And it was really exciting to have that opportunity to get it opened by somebody who if it wasn't for ILF wouldn't be here. So I recently also applied for my second grant, which was towards a new desktop for me in the studio, and it really has helped. And again, the process was efficient, and I'm now at a point in using Dundee in this new studio space as in my new role as a social media assistant for Dundee Heritage Trust, but most importantly being for Dundee Culture. And it's now a recording studio as well for my new podcast. And it's a space where I can speak to my mentor as well, and also a place where I can talk to many people like yourselves. And it's a major benefit of it is that it's only 10 steps away from my house. So I can then just go after a day at work, I just walk up and I'm just literally at the house. That is a major benefit of it as well. So it's quite cool. So I simply wouldn't be here without ILF, and it's changed my life, this fund, because I would not be sitting here doing this presentation where I am now without ILF. And it's helped grow Dundee culture so much, and I feel like without them I don't know where I would be. but the support has been absolutely incredible, and I can't thank the team enough. We, Alana, Peter, all these people who have helped me so much get to where I am today. It's just been absolutely a life-changing thing that I would never expect it to go through. But my advice would be for anyone who wants to apply for this is be inspired and try something new. That's ILF Scotland's tagline. So I really appreciate everything that they've done, and I'm so glad that I have the opportunity to share this with you today. So thank you very much. And thank you, Disability Equality Scotland, for this opportunity for me to discuss and showcase what I do, and showcase Dundee a little bit more as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Andrew. That's great. A really good presentation, really helpful, and also a good example of the support that you can get from ILF. But I suppose I have to ask, are you sitting in your studio right now?
Yeah, this is yeah.
Good. That's great. Thank you so much. And thanks to Lee as well. Did anybody have any immediate questions that you wanted to ask Lee or Andrew before we break out into our discussion groups? Want to either pop it in the chat or...
I've seen one come up in the chat there, Emma, if I can just go on to it. Yeah.
I can read it out for you, Lee. It's from Becky, and it's about the example you gave earlier about the driving and the theory test. Becky wants to know, would the ILF fund cover the 40-hour lessons plus a theory test, or did you say that you wouldn't fund the theory test as well?
Oh yeah, so just to clarify, we would fund up to 40 hours lessons, whatever was required, your practical, your theory, you know, and provisional if you needed it. The only thing we wouldn't be able to fund would be an actual car, which we get asked about quite a lot, but there's quite a lot of risk attached to that. But that's, sorry,
thank you very much. Sorry, could I just quickly maybe pass a wee message on to Andrew and just say that, like, I've got goosebumps listening to that. Dundee is my special place for various reasons, and I think it is so underrated, for lack of a better word. I'm actually going for a night away tomorrow. Anytime we go on holiday, it's to Dundee, because that's just my special place. I'm an adoptee, and that's where my birth family are, so it's got a big place in my heart, and it just meant a lot. Watching your presentation there, and just to see as well how much that's benefited you personally. Do you mind if I ask, are you from Dundee? You've got an East Coast accent.
Yeah, I'm born and bred Dundonian, so yeah. Yeah.
When I win the Euro Millions, I'm buying a house in Broughty Ferry. That's my place.
Thanks, Becky. That's great.
Thanks, Andrew. That was great.
Thank you, Becky.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody. What we'll do then is we'll break out into our small discussion groups where each will have its own facilitator. We've got some key questions that we would like to run through with you, but I'll give you the chance to have your say. So we've got about 30 minutes set aside for discussion, and then we will go straight into a 10-minute comfort break. So in just a minute, you'll be moved into your discussion groups, and we'll meet back here about 2:40 to hear a little bit more about what you've talked about, and for our panel of Andrew and Lee to respond to any final questions that you might have. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. This is just a chance now to hear from each of the facilitators so we can find out what everybody was talking about, and then we'll have a chance for some questions before we finish at 3 o'clock. So if I can just ask James, first of all, can you give us a little bit of a roundup of what happened in your group, please?
Yeah, no worries. It was a good discussion that we had, so thanks to all the people in my group who contributed. And we talked around the general awareness of the ILF Transition Fund and what methods could be put in place to promote it even further. So we thought it was important that we had to be mindful of the different communication strengths and preferences, and that comes back to a concept that we look at called inclusive communication. We did discuss the importance of engaging with younger people directly who will benefit from the Transition Fund, and the methods, communication methods that would be best for them. So we looked at social media channels, that kind of thing, but also be mindful of the methods that are in place when targeting parents as well. So the methods that are mentioned will be different. But yeah, we also discussed events and awareness sessions. So I guess, like what we're doing at the moment, to find out more about the Transition Fund, it would be useful to hold similar events to this, awareness sessions. But again, being mindful of people who maybe don't have access to online methods. And when things start to open up a bit more, then it's looking at whether it's possible to hold some kind of face-to-face awareness sessions. Again, just to find out about the benefits of the Transition Fund and how to actually apply for it, looking at the application process. And yeah, I think another method as well was to work closely with schools and colleges. And again, the schools and colleges start to open up a bit more. It's looking at getting those resources out there and promoting the Transition Fund. We had somebody in my group who was representing the college and who said that there's various groups within the college as well that they can share those details. And yeah, and just in terms of other methods of promotion, we were looking at getting the message out through different organizations and different charities. So I had a representative from the National Autistic Society in my group, and there was discussions around how we could get the message out through mailing lists, that kind of thing, newsletters, kind of similar to what we do at Disability Scotland, where we have our own newsletter, and we've also got our access panels where we can share the message. And yeah, and finally we also looked at, in terms of promotion, was sports clubs and community groups. Again, that's something that we'll maybe start to see a bit more of once things start to open up. And that kind of leads on to the discussion we had as well about the impact COVID has had on young people with transitions, going from school to education and employment. I think it's been very tough. There has been a lack of opportunities. There's been a lack of opportunities for jobs and volunteering, that kind of thing. There has been some success. We heard through Lead Scotland about various initiatives that have been taking place online, but again, that comes back to our discussion point on people who are unable to actually engage through online methods. So I think it's just ensuring through this transition phase, and when things start to open up again, it's ensuring that there's a lot of support in place for young people when things start to open up again. And that's also support as well. It's in place for mental health. That was another point that was discussed as well. So yeah, I think that kind of covers most of the points for my group.
Thanks, James. That's really helpful. It sounds like a really good discussion. Ian, can I hear from you now what your group discussed?
Hi everyone. So we had a really good discussion in our group actually, and I think similar to what James was just talking about, the key theme that was coming through was that it's consistency, and it's not necessarily that there isn't enough support out there for disabled young people. It's that people just aren't necessarily aware of what's available for them. And I think that was a really key theme that came through. It was awareness as well. You know, there's a lot of work, I think, to be done around making young people aware of what support is available to them and at what point in their life that's available to them, as well as the sort of preference for people having that consistency around that one dedicated person that they can speak to and that can be with them through that transition process. We kind of agreed that ILF really does have the kind of potential to change people's lives, you know, as we heard with Andrew's presentation at the beginning. So it would be great if ILF can then support people to find that thing that really inspires them in that situation. So in terms of what other types of support would be useful, I think I just touched on it briefly. It'd be looking for consistency across all the areas of Scotland and making sure that, sorry, one of my neighbours is carrying out some building work at the moment, so I don't know if you picked that up in the microphone, but it was just really badly timed. We need the consistency across Scotland essentially, and that people can have a key worker from that transition period right through as well. And in terms of the impact that COVID has had on young people especially, We talked about the kind of mental health aspect as well, which I think is really prevalent at the moment. You know, a lot of people are talking about this, and the fact that young people are struggling to engage with the online aspect. So a blended approach in future, a hybrid approach, which I think my colleague James just touched on, would be a good opportunity. In terms of our key asks, really to take forward, you know, if we were feeding directly back to policymakers and that sort of thing, it would be that there's lots of good initiatives going on, but we get the sense that a lot of it is happening in silos. And if each policy department doesn't know what the other one is doing, how are young people meant to know that? You know, how are young people meant to take advantage of the support that's available for them there? So, yeah, that's me. Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks, Ian. I think a lot of what you're saying has been picked up in my discussion group as well. I think very much, not so much a lack of information, but you're right in terms of not knowing exactly what to look for and where to go. I think a lot of people described it as like hitting a brick wall. It's very overwhelming. It's quite a complex situation to try and navigate. Even in our group, there's a lot of people who professionally worked in the third sector and still struggled to know where exactly to go for information. So we did discuss whether it was worth having a sort of central point of all, a place like a directory almost of where to go for information. I think we also talked about it's important to have young people try out different things so that they know exactly what they like and what they don't like, so that we can take that forward from a much earlier age, maybe 13, 14, so that they're in a position to get started with a transition at 16. And we talked about the impact of COVID as well, which I think has had long-term effects in terms of people with lost confidence, not having those opportunities to build networks, build up that resilience that we often think of, and that where support is necessary and is needed, there are huge waiting lists now, so that it's not always easy to get the help that we need. But I think we've got ILF there as a kind of at least one source of information that we can take forward. Thank you everybody for your contributions in the discussions, but we're happy now to take some questions if anybody has anything they want to raise or to clarify with either with Lee from ILF, or any questions for Andrew and his experience. You can either stick your question in the chat, is probably the easiest thing to do, or if you want you can raise your hand and I will try and see you. Lee, in the meantime, do you want to maybe say a little bit more about what your kind of next steps are? Is there anything that ILF have got up their sleeves that they're going to be doing or sharing?
It's really, yeah, really just a continuation of promoting the transition fund. As I said, the start of this year has been the most applications we've ever had in the first sort of quarter. What we're trying to do now is build on that and then raise awareness across Scotland. I'll be hopefully going to real life events, if you want to call it that, very soon, and getting back out across the country and doing what people have said in the breakout rooms is kind of getting that consistent message and in all the local authority areas, and trying to get the fund growing even further. And then with that becomes hopefully more funding, and then on top of that, we can maybe look at extending the age group. I'd love to see it, because I think, as I said at the start, transition can happen at any period of your life. Yeah. And then we hope to reopen the other funds that we have as well. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and we're doing a lot of strategy work as well, like most people are coming out of COVID. So that would be the future for us at the moment, anyway.
Great. Okay, so Jane is asking, Andrew, I think this one's for you. How long did it take for you to get the funding when you first applied? Can you maybe say a wee bit more about the process?
Yeah, so I applied in March 2019, and basically the process went to look at how, looking at the detail of what to expect, like applying for, this fund, and then it was just detailing out information on like basic details, and then obviously on for proving that you've got a disability, like PIP and all that. Like I said in my speech, it went quite effective, and it was the whole process was well. And I got told about my application in May, so it took roughly about 2 months from when I first applied to where I got I found out where I got my application, finding out I was successful. So it was that was that period of time where some of the people from ILF came to meet me to discuss and learn more about what I was wanting to do, and there were so many opportunities to let them know about my disabilities and get an idea of how they would help and just what to expect. And it was very simple, and there's so many opportunities to ask questions and get questions answered, and it was very effective. And and then when I applied for my second grant, that was done late last year. And then I found out, I think in February, when I got my grant, but the second grant application was much quicker than the first. So that was about a month compared to 2 months beforehand. So it's a bit of both in that aspect. I think maybe COVID may have had an impact on that decision. So that's the thing I got my experience of on the process of how I first applied in my second grant as well, that I both applied for. So yeah, that's how it all worked out for me.
Just to add to that, on top of what Andrew said, it's a 12-week turnaround for the funding. We can do things a lot quicker. That Christmas period that Andrew talked about, we were inundated, and we've now taken on some new staff to join the casework team. So they've identified that obviously we need more support there. But yeah, 12 weeks is the standard, up to 12 weeks for an application to be processed.
Great. Thank you. I've got a question here, probably for you, Lee. It's from Becky, asking for some examples of what people have spent their fund on. Is there anything that's kind of most common, or even an example of something that was particularly creative that would be good to share?
Yeah, sure. It's great because this is what I love about the fund, and when you get to see this stuff coming through, there's so many different things. So the typical one is, well, it's starting to reopen up now, but driving lessons have been huge, because you can imagine the cost attached to that these days. I think when I did mine, it was £15 an hour. It's like now 35, up to £35 in some areas. So shows you how old I am. Yeah, we get a lot of that. A gym starting to come back in. I'll give you some more left field stuff. We've had funding towards, so you could get stuff part funded as well if you're putting other funding towards it, or your own money. Lightweight wheelchairs for sports disability teams. We've had some basketball members get items there. We've had a therapy dog where the dog's been trained up to suit the disability. And that was interesting in the groups to hear that kids hadn't been able to leave their rooms. We had one lady who'd sent in photos of her daughter. She'd went the furthest she'd ever been from the house with the help of this therapy dog. And now she wants to start her own dog walking group. That's the sort of thing, the impact it can have, really, getting them. It's tapping into what they're passionate about. I know Mary said that about, how do I do it? It's about finding out what they like doing and building that location around it. Some of the other stuff we had recently over COVID, to give you an idea, we've had a guy that had done his tree surgeon course. I didn't even know what it was. I had to look it up. I knew trees, obviously, but he does a lot of stuff in woodland areas and looking after that and carving. And he did all that course outside through COVID. We had one of our other young ambassadors who's just joined, Hope. She got a sewing machine, all the materials that you need to, and she started her own little business. She puts embroidery onto bags, like hallmarks and stuff like that. So it's really about, that's some of the stuff that's been coming through. There's so much more: device, technology, travel, training. Music has been huge. Music has been absolutely huge in terms of like guitars, studio setups, So it's finding out what they're interested in and what would the benefits be from having these items, really. Yeah,
fantastic. I think that probably leads on to a question from Claire in the chat, which is about the opportunity to try different things. So she's saying, can my child apply for funding to support an evening college course to try mechanics but still stay at school, as she likes games development and mechanics, and my worry is she leaves school and then doesn't like mechanics. So I think we talked about that in our group about trying different things. Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so it's just reiterating the fact that, making sure that no other organisation should be funding that, and just checking that. And all we ask is that you put that in your application and say, like, I've tried to get funding for it at a place that costs this or that. It can't be afforded, or there's no funding for it. Yeah, but that you can do multiple things with this fund. You don't have to just settle for one thing. You can apply for multiple items. And the great thing about the fund is it's flexible as well. So if your daughter or son or daughter got halfway through the year and said, like, I'm just not enjoying that mechanical course, I'd like to do online cookery, just get in touch with us. We could get the redirection of funding signed off, and you can then move the money. Because we know that things can change quite quickly, especially with COVID and the lockdown period. But yeah, you could do a course at night and then you could be doing something else through the day with the funding. It's really what your interest is and what you're passionate about. And what I would say as well, don't just settle for that one thing. If it build everything around that, you know, that mechanic, could we get some tools or an additional course, or, you know, I don't know what else is involved in mechanics. I'm terrible
just
at
about
cars,
to say, sorry, I was just about to ask. My daughter actually made an electric bike from scratch.
Wow.
So she got the parts and made it all. So
Amazing.
what we're thinking was that you could she start like her own wee business where she got money to get the parts and then sell them. So then that would be doing something as well. This has just blown my mind. I'm like, oh, there's so many things you could do.
That's exactly what it's all about. You're tapping into her interests. So she even just from speaking to you in the breakout room, clear that she's got a passion for putting things together, build it all around that. So does she need an iPad to go with that? And that would allow her to access video content to teach her how to do these things. Or there could be an app that's built in to help around mechanics. So I say that a lot with the music stuff. Don't just settle for the iPad. Go for the £200 Ableton Studio that comes with one of the apps. So build it all around that. And then also within your application, it's building the benefits of that and working it into the, you know, what is the goal at the end of the year sort of thing. But yeah, happy to, as I said to Emma, follow up after and have a chat one-on-one and get some ideas and stuff about the application.
Absolutely. Great. I'm conscious of time, everybody. As I've said, if there's any other questions, you can let us know and we can pass those on to Lee and Andrew after the session.
Can I come in, please?
Oh, yes,
the
sure.
reason I have to hold my hand up is because I'm dyslexic.
The
reason I apologise is I can't type because I'm dyslexic and my hands get spasms, so I might hit the wrong button and put swear words up. That's why I've got to hold my hand up.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask Lee if there's any way that somebody could help me or point me in the direction. I know it's basics, going right back to basics, what you're talking about. How I would go about this for Daryl.
Yeah, I mean, what
maybe we can pick up on that maybe afterwards. Yeah,
there's definitely some support. We've got some our transition fund manager would be a good, he's got a lot of experience with this sort of thing. We could link up and maybe offer some support that way in terms of getting the application in and how you go about it. I'll send out some links to, as I said, to Emma, that have got some really helpful advice. There's also a fantastic website that is available. I will put in the link as well. It's called Disability Information Scotland, and they've got a lot of local, it's broken down into local authority areas, what's available there. So I just had that at the top of my head because I was using it this morning for something for my own work. So I'll get a nice email out via Emma and the guys and the team to share some of these links with you, and then we can, as I say, go from one to one. I can have a chat with you separately offline and chat through this, and we'll do the best we can to help you.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Thanks everybody for your time and your contributions today. As we say, we'll take all of your feedback and the discussion points and we'll put together a very short summary report that we'll share with you all, and we'll also share the information that Lee will send us. You will get a short summary report, a feedback survey, so please do take the time to give us your thoughts so that we can improve our webinars for next time. But all that remains is for me to say thank you to Lee and to Andrew, our comms team as well, our facilitators, and to all of you for your time and your contributions today. And we hope to see you again at a webinar soon. Thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.